Vamos.
Olá, boa tarde a todos. Obrigado por terem vindo no nosso meetup, excepcionalmente de almoço hoje, mas por uma excelente razão. A gente está trazendo desde Londres a Giorgia Prestento, que, enfim, além de uma colega, uma amiga antiga, mas não está aqui por ser nossa amiga, ela está aqui porque ela vai tratar de um tema que a gente entende que é super relevante, que a gente estava na nossa lista na pauta já faz algum tempo. A Jorge, ela é consultora de estratégia, consultora em mudanças organizacionais, ela é cientista comportamental, ela tem, além do mestrado em ciência comportamental, um MBA, e ela trabalha já há mais de 20 anos gerenciando e liderando programas de mudança em organizações de diferentes naturezas, healthcare, tecnologia e outras indústrias em diferentes países. E, mais recentemente, há exatos 15 dias atrás, ela lançou o primeiro livro dela, que chama Master the Change Maze, A Leader's Guide to Transformation Without Chaos. E aí a gente entendeu que era o momento certo, a hora certa, para ela vir conversar com a gente e debater com a gente esse tema, que é um tema que está sempre presente de uma forma ou de outra nos projetos e não tanto os projetos específicos de Behavioral Science, mas na nossa vida como cidadãos corporativos ou cidadãos organizacionais. Então, Georgia, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here, or actually share you with the community, and great seeing you again. And the floor is yours.
Cool, thank you very much. I'm glad that you started speaking English,
Mhm.
because for a moment I thought, oh, maybe the expectation is that I can speak Portuguese, which is obviously not going to work. I'm really happy to be on the call with you today. Is when Guilherme just got in touch and asked me if I wanted to talk, and I thought, oh yeah, that's going to be really, really good. And also, I look forward to hear about your experiences of behavioral science and managing change in Brazil, which is not a place where I worked. So getting your insights is going to be really important and useful for me. So I can start. I'm just going to, if I can share the slides which I prepared. Bear with me 1 second. Okay, no, there was.
Yeah, we were seeing, but now
Yeah, it was
Yeah, it
kind
was
of
sort of
small.
vertical.
Yeah,
it appeared.
yeah.
I think it will work.
Okay.
If you
Yeah,
could
just
put in presentation mode, maybe.
yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, yeah, it's cool. And I believe now you can see it. So as Guillermo was saying, the book is called Master the Change Maze, and this is a webinar that I created to explain. I'm going to talk a little bit about the book, but most importantly, the messages inside there, and how they, they can help all of us who are working organizations, are either impacted or leading change. And something from the book is that it helped me shape my thinking as well, which I was not expecting. And very much now, this is my mission to help leaders reduce, potential issues, blind spots, and resistance to change before they occur. And I'm just going to take you through what I mean with that. I've been doing change for just about 20 years now. And very often, I'm asked to join a project either from the beginning or somewhere in the middle when things start going wrong. And when they start going wrong, normally there are, problems with, with resistance, communications, they're not measuring things, there is resistance from people. And that means a lot of, extra time, there are delays, additional costs, and also, people are unhappy. So I'm always being interested on, the people side of the change and the behaviors. And, after a while, you start noticing the impact that a badly managed change has on people. There is, people start losing their motivation, they, productivity diminishes, and generally, you have an unhappy workforce. And so that was one of the triggers of writing the book. It was my personal journey to discover how come that things, they tend to go wrong most of the time. And then, and from there, how can we sort of start improving things? And that's what the book helped me to explore, and led me to the desire now to start working with companies right at the beginning to help them overcome some of those issues, help them plan change in a way that at least we highlight some of the things that they may go wrong, and do so at the beginning of the project rather than waiting till it's too late. Which also means, saving time, saving money, and having, a happier workforce at the end of it. So this is something I was not expecting to come from the book, which is this new direction, which is more about preventing issues happening rather than fixing them. Having said that, most clients that I work with, they still want the fixing thing. But I guess it's part of the conversation that we have, and asking them, okay, next time you run a change project, let's start planning it in advance. Just a little bit about me. I'm not, I know already been introduced. What I wanted to say is that I help companies with their change, but I also like change myself. So I worked with lots of different companies. I lived in 5 different countries. And what I discovered recently is that every 10 years I do something, is either a master. So for the first part of my life, it was a master every 10 years. And now it's been 9 years and I just wrote the book instead. So I drive changing companies, but I'm also always seeking something new myself, just to give a little bit of an insight on me. So the presentation is going to be about the three different sections in the book. And for each one, I'm just going to talk about an important lesson from there. And also, actions that we can take to improve how we work and how we do things. And, I want to make them as lessons that we can implement fairly easily. There are 3 different parts in the book. The first one covers, the beginning. And that's where I think, our senior leaders, they don't spend enough time on, really setting the foundations of the change. And this is where they play a very active role. There is then a section on people where we look at anything from resistance, behaviors, and cultural diversity as well, which is another important topic, given that so many organizations, they are international, and we need to understand, the importance of different cultures, both national and functional. And then the ideal, which is, making it happen, but also creating a culture that is open to change over time. So next time another change comes along, hopefully it will be a little bit easier. This is something else that I started doing. It's still in its infancy. Of course, when I start working with a company, I know more or less what the problems are likely to be. But I thought, let's try and get some data. So I put together this very short questionnaire. It's 60 questions. And it starts, and this is just for people leading change. It's not for people like most of us. If you're a consultant, it doesn't really work. But this is very useful for leaders. And it looks at areas like the leadership style, the change capabilities in their team, and also the organizational readiness. And it's very short, it's very basic in a way, but it just gives you an idea of where the gaps are across those 3 different areas. I'm happy to share the link later. I just wanted to kind of bring to light that is, it could be us advising clients what we think is best, but it's also very useful to getting them to reflect and answer a questionnaire to give an idea of, what we should focus on when we have a conversation with them. As I mentioned, so this is the first part, setting out. Purpose is really important. And at the same time, going beyond what is the normal purpose. Because what I found with many clients, they may say, oh, we want to implement a new CRM system, or we just need, better vendor management, or, right now, or we want some AI. And I think the question for us is asking, what do you want to achieve with that? Because often companies want a new technology because it's nice and shiny, but it's about the problem that they want to solve. And I think this is something that we need to start from. Misalignment is something that I've been finding pretty much since I started. Probably because, companies are very enthusiastic. They start lots of projects that have different departments. And for example, one of the things that I found in misalignment is I was working with this company and they had 2 different departments implementing 2 different billing systems. And they didn't really know what the other one was doing. And of course, this is a waste of time and money. So this is the importance of making sure that the change program that you're starting makes sense in the ecosystem of what else the organization is doing. And then there is the blind spots. And blind spots, I'm just going to go a little bit more in detail on. These are some examples of blind spots that I think are fairly frequent in organizational change, and probably is the same ones that you find in your work as well. Information filtering, we know the definition, but in the context of a change, what I find is people across the organization, sometimes they are reluctant to give a truthful view of what's happening among the workforce. I found this in a company where they're going through a major HR transformation. Many people they would end up losing their jobs. And when I did the first presentation at the HR board, and I raised the concern that it was going to be, it's going to be really difficult. People that were going to be resistant, they were scared, they were fearing what was going to happen if they lost their job. And the board, they didn't take it too well. It made our relationship a bit shaky. What I learned is probably I was too direct. And I didn't realize that there was an underlying culture of preferring good news. And this is something that I notice in other places as well. So, and what I've learned is even sometimes, if we know that there is a problem, is how to best present it to the leaders. Because, if they react badly to what you were saying, then you don't have the opportunity of actually making the change happen. The data, we know context. I think one of the things that sometimes I encounter, there is a lot of information, but it doesn't take into account the how people are feeling and the emotional part of the change. They see things like, oh, we're gonna have 200 people that have to start using this new process, but without going behind the data and say, what does that change actually mean for people day to day? And so much of it is related to, low engagement with frontline employees and this, the very famous echo chamber effect, where we just tend to focus on the things that they align with our own thinking, which is very dangerous for a leadership team. This is an example that I read from Kodak. So one of their engineers, Sasson, they actually invented the digital camera in middle 1970s. He thought, oh, wow, this is so cool. It's just such a great idea. I went to the board and they said, oh, yeah, that's really nice, but don't tell anybody. It's gonna ruin our business of producing film cameras. And it didn't stop there. So there was also an internal research and, which confirmed that digital was the way to go. But again, the board decided to keep to their product and business model because they didn't want to lose out. And these things didn't even change in the mid-90s when there was a change of the board members, the CEO left, and still the rest of the board was reluctant to change what essentially is the purpose of the organization, their vision, which was, they were very set on the chemical side and the film cameras. So it was obviously, as we know, it was a missed opportunity, and the world sort of moved to digital camera in the 1990s, and they lost out so much of their position and marketplace. So this is an example of blind spot, and many of my examples, they're quite old because with hindsight, we actually understand, in a way, so much better what went wrong. So these are some of the actions that we can take. And the first one is holding up a mirror. Sometimes, all the blind spots, they come from ourselves. We are very much caught up with our way of thinking. This is how we are used to manage projects, to products that we feel really attached to. So it's very much challenging our thinking and realizing, is this is it still the right thing to do? The second one is difficult, and none of this I expect, is something that we can implement really quickly. The need to balance agility and being decisive. So if you have one, so a leader that's very decisive, for example, he may just sort of go ahead too quickly and just forget to, or not taking enough time to analyze the data, to clarify, is this the right product, the right thing to do? Innovation, I believe, is based on recognizing that mistakes happen. And especially at the beginning of the project, listening to alternative opinions, having a diverse team. And if somebody gives an idea, then we may think, oh, that sounds a little bit crazy. it may not be crazy at all, but it's something that needs to be considered in the wider context. And as I mentioned earlier, bringing some stories to data, sort of enlarging the scope of how we assess a project. The next section, of course, is about people. There are 3 chapters. Simply because in a book, you need to create chapters, but it could have been like a really big, large one. It just doesn't work very well in publishing, and they're all very connected with each other. Resistance is something that I've come across all of my career. From my first project, is always there. And I think, any company that thinks, the project is going to go smoothly, rationally, people will understand the purpose of the change, why they are asked to use a new system or follow a new strategy. In reality, as we know, we all react in an emotional way to change. And the more as leaders we realize that that's the case, the easier we'll end up. Behaviors we all know and love, and we recognize that people, they don't behave or they don't react as we expect. And here, as behavioral scientists, that's where we can start tweaking much more the work that we do in change management to adjust and to test, of course, what's the best approach. And in culture, in here, I include, national culture, of course, corporate, but also it's really important to consider functional cultures. Working with a team or managing a change in marketing is different from a finance team, and is different from an engineering team. They all behave a little bit differently. They want to be communicated with in different ways. And again, this is something, and a very important element that we need to consider. Something that I notice along my career that is not used in what I call traditional change management is social norms. We all know that, as social creatures, we tend to follow what other people do. And I think there's a gap in change management, in using it a little bit more. Even the interventions that we are very familiar with, like, 40% of your colleagues have already completed the training course, or 50% already started using the new process, is not used enough. And I think this is a great opportunity. And it's something that, I started using, much more, since studying behavioral science and becoming more, more familiar with the importance of understanding also which people we can identify as what I started calling as our influencers. So within a company, there are always people that, no matter what the job title is, they are naturally followed by others. Is the person that, you just stop and listen to because he's got some charisma, because they know what they're talking about, because they have that great expertise. So it's about spotting who those people are. And I started using this influencer role much more than what traditionally you do in change management, which is having a formal network of change agents. I find this more informal way of, spreading communications and getting people involved more effective. Of course, it works both ways. So it's very easy for negative behaviors to just sort of spread out across the organization as well. And that's where, measurements become important, and it's sort of tracking the effect of our change interventions. An example that I use of negative behaviors, again, is from a few years ago, is the Enron scandal, where the culture was so toxic, was so driven by unachievable sales targets. The people, employees, started, faking clients, creating accounts for fictitious customers. And of course, that imploded, as we know, because across the whole organization, from the employees doing that to the senior leaders, they were presenting a picture of the company, hiding their losses that didn't reflect the reality. And this goes back a little bit to the information filtering, which I talked a little bit earlier. So that's why it's really important keeping a pulse on what's going on in the organization, and understanding sometimes that the goals that you set, the objectives of the organization, they may have results that you don't want. And these are the things that we can start doing, choosing what are the social norms, what are the behaviors that we want people to show in the new organization after the change. And definitely, leverage, peers, or leverage those influential peoples to do, in a way, what is the core of the work. Because sometimes, especially if you are consulting, a change manager consultant, you can't do everything, and also employees that won't listen to you as much as they listen to their colleagues. And as I mentioned, communicate using the norm way. So very much using the information of what your colleagues are doing to create and communicate much stronger messages. The last section is about creating a culture that manages change again and again, because it's, as we all know, there will always be some change in organizations. And I think there is a missed opportunity not to prepare people to not so much embrace change, but recognizing that it's an important part of working in that organization. So signal covers communications. And I use the word signal because it's not just communications towards employees, explaining what the change is about. It also means engaging with your peers, other stakeholders, to get them on board, and making sure that they promote the change in their departments and in their teams. Also, it includes something that I'm seeing more and more, which is how do you communicate and how do you sell the change to the board or to the key decision makers. Something that I find a lot of in the UK is a reluctance of some senior leaders to take the decision or go ahead with the change. There is, because of economic uncertainty, people, they don't want to kickstart a project because they think, what if it goes wrong? What if it's gonna cost too much money? So shaping the change idea and presenting it to a board to get approval is another very important role for us as change agents. Measures is something that we don't do enough of. is I often with clients, I ask what you're measuring and what's important to you. And I think the quality of data is not there, or they're measuring the wrong things. And there is a lot of explanation that we need to do to make people more aware of the importance of measures. Especially to me in change programs is the before and after. It's essential to demonstrate and to make sure that the change actually is being effective, and also to demonstrate that essentially we've done a good job. So it has this really important role. And within Geared, to me, is about getting all the different elements ready for the change ahead. And within Geared, one of the things that I'm more attached to is helping leaders recognize that planning fallacy is a real thing. And by planning better, we make sure right at the beginning that we can prevent some of the issues in change. We can prevent some of the resistance, we prevent misalignment and some of the blind spots. We will never able to plan everything ahead, but even like 5, 10, whatever % of issues, if we can make sure that we avoid them, is good news for absolutely everybody. And in here is, I find companies, they tend to be too optimistic with a time estimate. Often also because it's easier to sell a project to the board if you say it's going to take 1 year, even if you know it's going to take 1.5 years. So I think there is a level of recognizing and just being truthful and being open about how long the change is going to take. There is this famous project in the UK, it's a government project, it's called HS2, high-speed train, and it's been going on for several years and it's not been completed yet. It's gone, I think the budget went 5 times as expensive, and they kept descoping parts of it. And that's a real, that's a real case that you can follow in the news. And, possibly they were a bit too optimistic to start with. Just very quickly on the past experiences, because it's something else that we don't tend to do at all in change projects, which is using our company past projects as a reference point to understand, this is how long it normally takes to run the project, and this is a fair estimate. Or also looking at how long the companies are taking to run similar projects. Because often they're very similar. If you want to implement Oracle or an SAP system in a medium-sized company in this sector, you will know more or less how long it takes at the companies, and you could use that as a more truthful estimate. And sometimes what I find myself doing is playing the role of the negative person, which is amusing because I'm like a very happy, positive person most of the time. I'm very optimistic, but it's just the importance of just bringing a balance so we can just plan more effectively. So to summarize, using historical data, critiquing the plan as well. One of the tools that I really like is the pre-mortem, which allows you to critique a plan, but without the emotional or the fearful way of just blaming people for it. And then, be truthful with your sponsor and the board, and sometimes it may be easier to get a program approved if it's over different phases, and they can approve one at a time, and that makes it easier to present and sell the change that way. So my mission is just try to avoid some of the issues that happen during the change projects by focusing right at the beginning and looking at how we set up and plan for a project, looking at the people and how we reduce resistance, and then everything else that we can do to make it happen. I'll just share the slide, but this is very briefly what I do: workshop coaching. I will be starting a masterclass in the autumn, like a program for leaders who want to understand a little bit more how to do change. It's not for change managers, it's for people that actually lead the change. And the book. And I'll share the details on how to get your copy, ebook copy, after the call. And now over to you. So I look forward to your questions and comments.
Great, thank you, Giorgia. Thank you so much. It's a extremely relevant theme. Everyone, if you guys want to, you can write in Portuguese in the chat and we translate, or you can raise your hands and then take the mic. I think we'll start. And he actually had a question. He was jumping the gun, asking the question before we started the meeting. So now he will share the question with you guys, and with that we can start the dialogue.
Thank you, Guilherme. Thank you, Giorgia. I have some questions on communication, how to communicate change. But before that, I would like to explore the section you mentioned on measurement.
Yeah.
As we know, behavioral science is grounded on evidence, numbers, experiments. So how could the field of behavioral science could help on this task of evaluating the effectiveness of change plans after the implementation? And how could the participants, leaders, low, mid, high management, could feel that they are part of the change plan, and they feel that they are progressing over time in that sense towards the goal?
Yeah. What I would say is start thinking as soon as possible what's important to you. What do you want to measure? And I think it could be, level of adoption, of course, is is a typical one. But what do you want to get by the end of the project? Do you want people to work faster? Do you want them to be more productive? Do you want the process timelines to reduce? These are all things that they need to be agreed by the leadership from the beginning. And then just start looking at measures from that point. Because so often we just leave it till it's too late. And then, being in projects, just, we're due to go live in 2 weeks. Oh, what shall we measure? And I was, okay, yeah, it's a bit late now. You can still try and do it. So just decide that at the beginning. And it goes back to the first thing I said, which was around purpose. What do you want to achieve from that project? So understand the purpose. What do you want to achieve? And based on that, what are the key measures? As I mentioned, companies, they're not really good at collecting relevant data. They seem to have lots of data, but not the one you want. And so it's just about essentially bothering people till you find something that is at least as close as possible. I've never been able to run any real experiment in companies. I think before and after is the one that I've been able to pitch and use the most. Control randomized test is like, oh, that would be nice, but nobody really voted yet.
Cool.
Hope that
Georgia,
answers the question. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
I have one before Henry throws the one in communication. I actually have one about incentives. So, I mean, what's the role of incentives and how to play and to use incentives? Because sometimes the incentive system run counter the change effort, the change project, or the change drive.
Yeah.
And also thinking about incentives, but actually in the reverse way, which will be sort of or the negative incentives of the punishment. It's how to deal from your experience. Which are clever ways to deal with people in different levels of seniority that are either resisting or sabotaging, and sometimes this resistance and the sabotage actually happens actively, which is probably actually easier to deal with, but sometimes it's actually silently in by omission. So I guess it's like 2 or 3 questions in one, but still, it deals on how to more materially, I suppose, drive behaviors with incentives and punishments.
Yeah, I'll give you 2 examples. So the first one, it was not actually my project. I happened to be in that right place or that place. So this was a call center of a company that kept having lots of complaints about people not answering the phone. So just say customers complaining, or we are online 1 hour, nobody answers the phone, and it's just your service is horrible. So the team decided to change the incentive, and they said, oh, you're gonna just get a bonus if we reduce the waiting time. So the quicker you answer the phone, the better you're going to be incentivized. So it was there when they started implementing it. And suddenly what we noticed, it was the queue was going down. But then we noticed that the agents that were putting the phone down on the customer they were talking with, because they said, oh, I just need to go to my next call. So they will just wrap it up as quickly as possible. So that was an incentive that went badly very quickly. So I think what I learned from that lesson is you need to test it. What behaviors are you going to drive with that incentive?
Perfect.
So it's not like a full answer, because then it depends on the context, it depends on the situation, but I think the key lesson is test it. And about the senior leader, I think that's a really interesting point, because often we tend to focus on the junior people running their engagement, the communication, but the change is relevant to senior people as well. And I was on this project where a head of department, he was going to lose most of his team, I think like 60%. So he was going to shrink. And he was in denial. He was very silent. He was considering, shall I leave the job? Because it feels like I'm going to lose all my power. So when I started talking with him, just sort of see, okay, I had a feeling something was not quite right with this guy. And his biggest fear, and that came out through many conversations, is lose their influence with the senior leaders. And there was a misperception because they were still valuing him, this guy. And but they didn't communicate it. They didn't tell him, oh, we value a lot, we want you to stay. And actually, because you have a smaller team, you can become more of an expert like we want you to be. So it's about understanding why people are resistant, especially if they keep quiet, and then just getting to the root cause. And normally that takes a few conversations. Keep asking why, keep asking them to explain.
Okay. Harry, want to do yours on communication? I see. Okay. I said Juliana had one.
to ask. Should I ask that question that I wrote in the chat?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Just Georgia, do you have an example of a company that really did a behavior change, a process that you really admire, and which were the key factors that influenced that change that you saw as an important case study for us to understand and search for?
Not personally. So it's normally I work with companies that they don't have a behavioral change department or a behavioral science department. So I've not actually seen it. I think there's still a lot of work to do. I don't have an example of that. And funnily enough, I was talking with, it was actually a fellow alumni of the LSE master a couple of days ago. He works in banking and he used to be a head of a behavioral unit. He no longer does that role, but he was explaining how, even having a behavioral science unit and talking with other bank colleagues, having those units, they could not bridge that gap and actually bring in behaviors to the people across the employee and, helping them with the change. Yeah, I would have loved to say, oh, wow, I know this great example, but I don't.
Thank you very much. We know that's very challenging, and also some cases they won't publish. Yes, they won't publish details, and it's hard for us to have more insider information. So thanks.
Yeah.
Henry?
Henry, may I read Juliana's? So Juliana asked in the chat that in her experience, it's hard to play the role of the negative person in company discussions, which is you mentioned you do, and which is probably easier as an external consultant to be that person. So if you can give some insight on how can we prepare leaders or I say nudge them to be more open to receive that sort of the negative role of that contrarian view in company discussions in discussions about change.
The way that I've been doing a few times is kind of like a role play, rather just say, oh, what if? So what if this product is not going to be successful? Or what, introducing that kind of bit like a game or like a scenario, rather than stay directly I looked at the plan, I looked at the marketing idea, I looked at the product, it's not going to work. Just sort of making it more, lighten it up by using what if. And often dedicating a specific time to it. Let's have a half an hour session to sort of think outside the box or, a little bit different. Sometimes it may be like taking the team out for a walk in the park or just a different setting to actually help this different way of thinking. With that board I gave in the example, I kind of work out I could give bad news pretty much one every 3 presentations. Because they will just sort of managing. Also with that team, what I did, it was sharing my views and my thoughts in advance with some of the participants, and sort of using that to familiarize themselves with what I was going to say. So you had some allies during the presentation. So they will start nodding rather than look at you with just wide eyes. And that help with sharing some of the most difficult news.
Excellent. Thank you. Harry,
Okay.
do the one on
I think that the final part of that question answers my own question, because I was really trying to explore a little bit more about on how to communicate the change process, because sometimes, or most of the times, when myself I participated in some change processes, I saw that some leaders could show throughout the way, or we start gaining hearts. People that were not part of the initial phase of the project start seeing what we are doing, and we start gaining hearts, so we gain interest from them, or apathy somehow, or even reactance, critiques. And my question will be like, what are the best practices, and how behavioral science could help on adapting the message once the change process had already started, knowing that people will change or could evolve the group of the stakeholders we have along the way.
Yeah. I will start by saying that we need to repeat the same message many times. That's another mistake that I've seen in many projects, especially among leaders. They'll just do a town hall, they do a big presentation, and then everything goes quiet. But what happens when, our attention span of all of us is very limited. So somebody talks like me right now for half an hour. If you remember one message, I will thought, oh, okay, job well done. And I think in change programs, we don't repeat enough. And we don't repeat over time. And then we are surprised because people don't get it. And it's just the repetition. Creating familiarity is really important to bring the message to light. And then adapting. We all know that people assimilate information in different ways. To me, even something as simple as having a little logo for the project, and that gets repeated every time you send an email or every time you talk about the project, it helps like people getting it in their mind. And when they see the image, when they read the slogan, okay, it's quicker. And then they'll say, they're kind of preparing their head to the message. I would also say, keep it simple. I worked with some communication teams, which were very keen on giving lots of information. And when you receive an email, which is 2 pages, nobody reads it. So I'm really convinced that like three messages maximum, just sort of lots of space in between. So hopefully that highlights what are the key things that we want people to do, to think, to feel, to remember. Hope that answers the question. Thanks for the thumbs up, Henry.
Thank you. Guys, pessoal, if we are getting right on time for everyone's lunch break, but if you guys have any further question, ou se vocês tiverem mais uma pergunta, it's time. And if not, then yes, we are gonna take the picture. Georgia, we have this tradition everybody put their cameras on. We put the view on that. I forgot it's the tiny Windows wheel. View, and then Flavia takes a picture and shares with the group, and with you also. I'll send you later the pic.
Yeah, please do. Yes.
Cool. So everybody, with the
Tô no mudo. Pessoal, quem que puder colocar a câmera aí.
On the gallery view, that's the name of the view.
Tiramos essa nossa foto especial. Thank you so much, Georgia. It was amazing, your talk. Looking forward to read your book. Thank you for the generosity and all the information you shared with us today. Hope we keep in touch, and really have more information when I read your book and we can get in touch.
Yeah, no,
Ok.
thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Então, pessoal, vou tirar uma foto. Ó, já vi que Marcelo, Juliana, Ana Luísa, Paula, todo mundo já colocou a câmera, Joyce. Que bom, pessoal. Então, 1, 2, 3 e já. Mais uma só para garantir. Calma aí que estava com comentário. 1, 2, 3 e já. Que legal, pessoal. Eu mando para vocês aí para registrar esse momento. Um bom almoço para todo mundo. E thank you so much, Georgia. Have a great time.
Thank you,
Thank you to
guys.
you. Obrigada.
Thank you.
Obrigada.
Até o mês que
Obrigada.
vem, pessoal.
Obrigada. Até mês que vem.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye bye.